So what is the format of University of Toronto's PA School interviews this year?
So we did, both of us signed a non-disclosure agreement when we completed our application. So we're not able to share really much about the process of the interview or the questions we were asked, but just in general, ours was an online format because of the pandemic. And so I think I would assume again this year it's online. So I think the main aspect to having an online interview as opposed to in person is there's some great opportunity to prepare a little bit differently because you can anticipate your testing environment. I say testing, but I mean interview, that kind of environment that you're going to be in. And I think that can be really comforting for some people. It might be uncomfortable for others, but there are some key aspects that you can make sure that are set in place to make sure that you're going to have a successful interview. So what I mean by that is making sure ahead of time that you have a strong Wi-Fi connection. So not an hour before your appointment, for your interview time, you're looking to make sure your interview is strong. It means in advance you're looking at your internet connectivity speed, making sure that that's strong. Also making sure in your environment is one that's appropriate for an interview, and your attire as well. So I think those are all important aspects to consider as you're preparing for an online setting. And then an additional aspect to consider is, since it is going to be online, that you can prepare getting comfortable talking in front of a screen. I think now, because many of us are doing school online, we're getting more and more comfortable talking to little circles on the top of our screen as opposed to a face. But I think that that's an important part to get comfortable with if that's something that you're not a huge fan of. So you can practice in a similar environment to what is going to be the actual interview.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think there's like plus and minuses for the fact that it's an online format. Like for me, I really like that. I was like kind of in my own environment. I wasn't, stressed trying to find the street because I don't know Toronto. I didn't have to like take the transit and be like all sweaty because I'm running all over the place. I was in my home, so it was really I felt more confident in that. I was able to have my routine in the morning, so that was really nice. And like Hannah said, it's kind of weird at first when we're talking to a screen, and this is something that I always tell people, that you need to practice. You need to record yourself practicing, because you won't, like, when you have a normal interview in person, you might get feedback or the person might like nod or whatever. But if you're recording yourself, it's just you. It's just you and yourself. So you have to get comfortable with that, and kind of having to know what's your posture. If you're like this, like that doesn't work. If you're like super close or super far, that doesn't work. So it's really kind of adapting to the online world. And I think it's something also that will apply to PA school because you're doing it all online, but also, patient communications. And I don't know if you have like interactions with patients online, but a lot of it now is telehealth. So it's something that you can learn now, but apply it later as well.
So how did you practice for the MMI knowing that it was online?
So I think the big thing about practicing for the MMI is just that practicing, like something you can prepare for and you can put time into to practice in advance instead of just winging the questions on the day of. So first of all, understanding what is an MMI, what is the format like, and what are the different varieties of questions that you could be asked. So just understanding the variety of questions instead of being concerned with having practiced every single question in the book, because that's exhaustive and probably not possible. Just being aware of the variety and how you can respond to different questions, how you can think critically to be able to respond to a question and have a kind of a structured way of responding. I'm hesitant to say formulaic because obviously you want to avoid being robotic in your response, as you want to be authentic, but at the same time, you want to be structured in your thoughts. You want to show that you can think through a response when you're giving it. And I think that really comes through practice. I think it's more natural for some people as opposed to others. So it might take a little bit more time. Maybe you have to practice writing out your response to kind of get through how you can structure a response well to feel confident, or maybe you just need to practice saying it out loud a bunch of times. There's so many different ways that you can practice. And I think it depends on where you've identified that your weaknesses are. There's also lots of written books that you can look up, online web pages. There's so many different available resources, some free, some paid. So I think spending some time, first of all, understanding what the MMI is and the variety of questions you could be asked. Then the second thing is maybe choosing a few resources that you think may be helpful for you specifically. So if you have issues or difficulty, maybe having answers to ethical-based questions, and maybe it's exploring some more resources regarding that. And then maybe if it's a more traditional question or whatever the type of question, if you notice that you have more struggle with that, maybe that's a resource that you dig deeper in. So some resources available. And then the third piece, which is something that we've stressed so much in this online Q&A already, is the introspection piece. So it's the thinking through what you would like to offer and what you'd like your interviewer to come away with at the end. So what are some pieces that you just want to leave on the table that you've said? So for me, I found it most helpful to create an Excel spreadsheet, coming up with some of the fundamental activities, work, personal life experiences that I had that I thought may be helpful in the MMI. So I created an Excel spreadsheet. I made that available on my Instagram. If you're interested, you can download it through the link in my bio. That's just me because I'm a very organized in the way that I think. So I found that really helpful to prepare. And then also practice. When I did practice questions, I practiced with my computer because I did know it was online. And then I went through my responses with family members and we looked at them together. We thought, what are some things that I could work on? Was I saying too many times? Or maybe was I not communicating what I initially hoped that I would to my interviewer? So those were some feedbacks that I gave to myself and then things I could work on as I continued through the MMI. And just thinking that you want to share it as much as you can with the interviewer, so diversity if possible. And I think the best way to do that is to have already done some introspection, so you have some things that you can rely on at your fingertips to the interviewer, as opposed to having to think in the moment, which might be a bit trickier, especially with the stress of the interview. And then I'll just share one more piece of something that I found helpful as I prepare for the MMI. It just has to do with physical activity. So I did a lot of yoga in preparation for the MMI because I was quite stressed as I prepared. And so actually, when I got my acceptance to U of T, I was in the middle of a yoga session. So it was something that I found really helpful. I think just anything you can use for stress relief, physical activity is a great outlet, but it's really important when you're preparing for such a stressful interview.
Yeah, I would say, like, I know like a lot of people are in that phase right now where they are preparing because it's coming up. It is super stressful. Oh my God, I'm so happy I'm past that phase. And I'm sure you are too. But you'll get through it. You just need to prepare. I would say that, like kind of said, like her, she was saying, I have to be careful with my ums, for example. So kind of, again, have that introspection and say like, oh, what is something that I might do that might penalize me on my interview? So for me, I'm Francophone and I speak super fast. Like I know even now I'm talking fast. That's just who I am. And I knew that in an interview, I couldn't, like I had to tone it down a bit. I had to slow down. So when I would record myself on my own, I would be like, slow down. So I would always tell my desk to slow down. I would listen to it. I'm like, oh my God, that's still too fast. So it really helped me kind of have that, feedback to be like, okay, that's too fast. So this is the speed I need to talk to during my interview. So having that practice really helped. Of course, do your research. I know like oftentimes we kind of recommend doing right, but it's like this big. It's really big. So you have to start in advance. If you only have 2 weeks, you probably won't have time to go through it. So just read up online, stay up to date with current events. I personally, what I did is I went onto Twitter and just followed a bunch of health journalists. Like André Picard, for example, is really great. He works for Globe and Mail, and he always talks about, like right now it's huge on COVID, and he'll share like tons of articles that he wrote or colleagues wrote, and oftentimes it's like ethics based. So that was really helpful for me. And then the biggest point was the fact that I connected with 2 other applicants via the Facebook page. And I see that people are doing that now this year too. So I'm really happy people are doing that. So I found 2 people that also had interviews. One had an interview at Mac and one had an interview at U of T, and I had an interview at both. So what we did is that we, every night for the last like 2-3 weeks before the interview, or almost every night, we'd connect on Facebook video or whatever. And we would just go through cases, and it would actually be super stressful at first because we didn't know each other. So it's kind of weird practicing with people you don't know. But I think that's like it's the stress you're kind of going to have for the interview. It's actually really good. And then we just take turns in answering a various type of questions. We do like the BMO. Like BMO has like a 200 like MMI question list that's really amazing. So we'd kind of go through them and give each other feedback, like what we should improve, what was good. And when we got to the interview, we kind of felt prepared, and like you were all three of us were accepted. So it was really helpful for us anyways to practice with other people. And again, like, yes, they're your competition, but you know, it's always good to help each other out.